Hello, I'm Philip Hughes and the chair of the Maroondah Interfaith Network. And this seminar is about harmony in society, and particularly about the inclusion of young people. But first I want to acknowledge the First Nations people of this land on whom we meet, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and we pay our respects to their leaders, past, present and emerging. The aim of the Maroondah Interfaith Network is to bring people together from different religious backgrounds and to understand our differences and to recognise our common humanity. At the heart of our pluralistic society, we need to find ways in which all people can feel that they have a place in that society. We need to build an inclusive society. That same sense of inclusion has been threatened over the last few weeks as an offshoot of the war between Gaza and Israel. But it has long been problematic for young people, especially those who feel that they are different from others in their sense of identity, their sexual orientation, or in their mental health. I'm delighted that Rachelle Jones has agreed to tell us what the Maroondah Council is doing in this space. Rachelle started as a youth worker in 2014, firstly working in youth homelessness, and then moving to a role as a youth development worker, and finally into the team leader role in 2019. She's worked on a range of programs since then, including a number of LGBTIQA+ inclusion projects and the redevelopment of a wellbeing leadership program and support services for young people. And I invite her now to speak to us.
I'd like to acknowledge that we are on the traditional land of the Wurundjeri people, and I would also like to pay my respects to their elders past and present. Great, so yeah, as Philip said, I'm from Maroondah City Council Youth Services, coming up to 9 years working in the team out there. We are based in Ringwood for our office-based stuff, but we've got a youth centre in Croydon as well. This is just a bit about me. So my pronouns are she, her. This is my greyhound that arrived at our door during stage 4 lockdown a couple of years ago. Have spent so much time working with young people, and I think one of the best parts about it is that it is an ongoing learning journey because young people are teaching us stuff all of the time. I work with a team. There's probably about six of us, or 7 including myself, youth workers out at Maroondah, some part-time, some full-time, and we work to deliver a bunch of services and programs for our young people. So our age range is from 10 to 25-year-olds, so some youth services can start at 12, we start at 10, and I'm gonna first tell you a little bit about what we do and the programs that we offer for our young people. The criteria for getting involved in our programs is pretty loose. We say having a connection to Maroondah, which basically means if you've ever shopped at Eastland, you have a connection to Maroondah. As long as young people can get to our services, we're really open to that. And we do work a lot with our schools in the local area as well. That's what we do. So our program's going to shift and change as the needs of young people change. As we know, that happens probably quicker than what we can keep up with. But I'll run through what we're currently doing, and then kind of talk a little bit about what Philip was saying around how we specifically focus on how we can be inclusive of all young people. So we are what's called a generalist youth service, so meaning there isn't a specialty focus about what we do in our programs and services. We do our best to cater to all young people. So one of our biggest assets is our youth centre. We're really lucky that we have a dedicated youth centre for our young people. It's called EV's. EV's Youth Centre. We get asked all the time, what does that mean? Nobody has a clear answer. The best I have is an entertainment venue, but still doesn't tell me why there's an S on the end, but that's okay. It is what it is. So EV's Youth Centre hosts most of our programs, if not all. It has been around for over 100 years as a building, but as a youth centre it's been about 25 years or so. So EV's Hangout is our, what we call our biggest open access program. So this is that we will open up our doors every Thursday between 3 and 6 p.m, except for the 2 weeks over the Christmas period. It runs all through the school holidays apart from that. And it is just open for young people to drop in. It's a drop-in program. They can come and go as they please. We have youth workers there, so 2 youth workers there every week to be able to support young people if they need. But otherwise it is just a place and a space to connect with other people. My colleague he gets very excited about coming up with new themes for each week, so they can be quite elaborate, different themes of activities that young people can get involved in, but otherwise they can just come and hang out and connect with each other. So that is that one there. We also offer one-on-one support for our young people. So our youth support service is not counselling or psychology services, but it is goals-based support, so helping young people to identify goals that they want to work on or things that they want to achieve, and we will support them to do that. It's very flexible. We look at the whole age range for this one, so 10 to 25-year-olds. It's all completely free, and we can support young people for up to 12 months in this program as well. So we do things like supporting young people to get settling payments, getting them involved in education or employment, personal goals, life skills, cooking, navigating public transport, all those sorts of things. It's a big range depending on what they want and need. We also have our L2P program. So this is a statewide program. It runs across all of Victoria, and this is where we train, recruit and train mentor drivers. So anybody who has a full Victorian driver's license can mentor a learner driver to help them learn how to drive. So to be eligible as a young person, they need to not have access to a vehicle that they can learn in, or a supervising driver that is suitable for them. We know they've got to get 120 hours, and that is a lot. If you don't have an adult in your life who can teach you how to drive, that becomes a massive barrier for young people, and then they have to wait until they're over 21, so they don't have to get those hours. And even then, driving lessons are very expensive. So this runs across all of Victoria. There's a lot of different councils that run this particular program. We do a range of wellbeing sort of focused programs. Our sort of mission as a service is to raise the wellbeing of young people in Maroondah. One specific one that we have is our Student Wellbeing Action Teams program. So this is where we connect students from across all the schools in Maroondah in Year 10. To come together on a wellbeing program. So we take them away on a camp and work through a bunch of different wellbeing sort of tools, all focused around positive psychology and the PERMA framework, by sort of Martin Seligman back in the day. And then we support them to go out and empower other people in their lives with wellbeing tips and strategies and things like that. We have our Maroondah Youth Wellbeing Advocates, so this is where we actually pay our young people to come and work with us. So this is 15 to 25-year-olds. We have a small group of 12 to 14 young people who help counsel to do things better to suit the needs of young people. So consulting on different projects. Are we being inclusive of young people? Are we reaching the right young people? How can we do things better? That sort of a thing. And they also run our annual youth forum as well. So we train them to be able to facilitate for other young people, to hear more voices of young people. And then our freezer program, this is another program that runs across all of Victoria. So each year we bring in a group of young people to plan and run a bunch of events in the local community. A lot of them are live music events. EV's Youth Centre is quite known for their music and has had a number of really successful bands play their first gigs back in the day at the Youth Centre. So we're really lucky we've got all the tech set up there to be able to run these events. So we train young people in how to run events, how to do the AV and all those sorts of things. And they get to choose what sort of events they would like to put on. We have a budget, we say you've got this much money, what would you like to do with it? And they go ahead and run a bunch of different events for the community. We also have 2 groups specifically for our LGBTIQA+ community, so My Pride and then Sage. Fundamentally they're the same program, they're just for different age groups. So My Pride is for 10 to 13 year olds and Sage is for our 14 to 18 year olds. The group meets every fortnight and it is just an opportunity to connect with people who have shared experiences and do different sort of activities and that sort of thing. And then this is our newest program, it's our Art Venturers program. So this is a fortnightly art program for our 10 to 14 year olds. Where each fortnight they explore a different art medium and it's just around sort of connecting through the shared forms of art for our young people. That's kind of our programs. Does anyone have any questions about any of the programs before we kind of move into how we do sort of inclusion? Yep. Cool. If anyone has any other questions, feel free to jump in at any point. So obviously when we're talking about young people, they are not a homogenous group. Young people, like any other kind of age cohort, has a heap of differences, a heap of different intersectionality, really different lived experience, and sometimes that can be really tricky to make sure that we can meet the needs of all young people. We won't always be able to do that, but we do our best. And this is just kind of a few ways that we do that here at our service. So the first thing that I think is really key is that we ask young people about everything that we do. So as a team of youth workers, we're not able to just say, this is a really cool thing that we should do, because we think young people would really like it. It is not the way that we work. Most of our team are pretty young, but not young people in that sort of age cohort, and we don't know everything about young people. So one of the things that we do is we ask young people on a really regular basis. So our Maroondah Youth Wellbeing Advocates program is one mechanism of doing that, but we also consult with the wider community every 2 years and have a new action plan that comes into effect every 2 years as well. We do also ask young people specifically about inclusion at our programs, so that's through people that are already participating in the programs asking for feedback anonymously at touch points throughout the program. And sometimes we'll have sort of surveys up where young people can scan with their QR code around the youth centre. Our most recent one was seeking feedback from young people around what they would need from sensory spaces, and so that we can keep changing and shifting what we're doing. So asking young people is our sort of number one. Even if we think we have a good idea, it's important for us to sort of try and test that with young people before we kind of jump in. And young people are the biggest advocates for inclusion, is what we're sort of seeing. They're the ones that will tell us, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? You know, my friend experiences this. Will it be inclusive of that? That sort of thing. Like, they are living in a really different world, I think, and they're on it. They are so across all of this stuff that needs to happen and change. So, they're teaching us all of this stuff all the time. So what I've kind of done is looked at a couple of our different sort of vulnerable cohorts of young people and some of the strategies that we use for that. So thinking first about our First Nations young people. So we make sure that we do acknowledgement of country and supporting our young people to say and write their own acknowledgement of country, which, you know, all of our big events that we do, our young people kind of open up with their own acknowledgement of countries there, and at all of our programs and things like that as well. Our youth centre has a traditional land map up on the wall, as well as other signage, and we've got a written acknowledgement of country up at the youth centre as well. Making sure that we're acknowledging all of the significant days or weeks for our First Nations communities. And as part of that, some of the things that we'll do is like highlighting our First Nations artists, performers and things like that, or other media that highlights First Nations peoples as well, and including the use of sort of native foods and things like that as well. Of course, we do staff training. Staff training will be on all of these slides. It's really important for us to keep on top of things. We do have an internal working group for First Nations people at council, so there's a lot of information sort of being shared there as well. And yeah, sort of understanding and navigating how we can do things the right way. There's probably more to this, but these are just some of the kind of the things that we've embedded into our programs and services as well. Next is our LGBTIQA+ young people. So we have a range of our pride flags up around our youth centre. All of our youth workers have got their pronouns on them in some way, shape or form, whether that's on their name badge or whether that's a separate pronoun badge. So for me at the beginning I introduced using my pronouns, which is she and her, and so we do that as well in every time we meet a new group of young people, and have touch points for that throughout. We know people's pronouns can change and shift as well. Ally badges as well, so people in council who are supportive of the community can be visible and seen by our young people. We also have internal ally training, which runs every 6 months at council for people to participate in, celebrating significant days across the year. There's a bunch of different days that particularly sort of celebrate or highlight the LGBTIQA+ community. We often have events attached to those days as well. We've got a bunch of different events coming up over the next few months, particularly for this community, including attending the Pride March, which happens every Feb, and making sure that our bathrooms that we have in our youth centre are gender neutral and really inclusive of our trans and gender diverse community as well. Disability, so again, staff training on this one. This has been probably our biggest focus over the last 12 months. We've seen a lot more young people identifying with disabilities or neurodivergence, so we've needed to really make sure that we're upskilling and keeping up with what our young people need. So this includes things like having social scripts, which I'm not sure if people are aware of what they are, but it is sort of stepping through what to expect when you attend one of our groups. So we've got photos and step-by-step on what things will look like, and giving young people an idea of what's going to happen when they get there. We know there's a lot of anxiety that's coming out of being locked down for so long, so this is super useful not just for people with disability or neurodivergence. I personally love a social script. I like to know what I'm walking into. I find that's really useful. The use of sensory toys or objects and things like that, we make sure that they're readily available all of the time, and also actively encouraging people to use them, and role modelling that, as a lot of our workers are neurodivergent as well, so they're able to sort of model that behaviour too and know that that's okay. making sure that there's quiet spaces available, noise cancelling headphones, those sorts of things, and making sure young people know how and where to access that when they're in our programs. Having access key, this is something that we are working on at the moment. It is not fully developed through all of our services at Council, but this is showing sort of the inclusive elements of a space. So is it wheelchair accessible, that kind of thing, so that people know before they enter a building. And where possible, having Auslan interpreters. This is something that this is a real big barrier for us, just with cost, because it's never included in funding. So this is, a push that we're having to kind of move through at the moment with Auslan and also other language interpreters as well, so we know how important that is. So there are a couple of bits for disability. And then our culturally and linguistically diverse community. So again, our staff training. For us, representation has been a really big factor in this one as well. What we hear from young people is they feel safer and more included if they feel represented in a space. So seeking out funding for roles that are specifically for bilingual roles and things like that, so that we can have a more diverse representation in our council, which helps people feel like they can belong. If that's not possible, then seeking out partnerships. There are lots of places that do this super well, so seeking out those partnerships to help with inclusion and representation, and then of course interpreters as well. For this one, I think that's my end of those bits. It's a super quick snapshot, and I'm not sure if all that sort of makes sense, but happy to answer any sort of questions or anything like that about what we're doing in this space.
What sort of numbers are you working with?
Across sort of all of the programs? Yeah, it really varies. A lot of our groups that we run, so our drop-in program, we have maybe averaging about 30 young people will turn up a week. Our other groups, we try and keep them pretty small and offer the opportunity sort of every 1 to 2 years. So our closed groups sit anywhere between sort of 12 to 15 young people at a time. And then our events can be really varied. We've got our annual youth awards coming up in a couple of weeks, and we've got 128 young people that are being recognised there for their achievements and contributions. So it varies, but we tend to operate in quite small groups, just to make sure everyone has space.
So do people get referred to your services?
Yeah.
Like a psychologist or a school say, look, we think this program really suit you?
Yeah,
or
definitely.
Or do parents just say, oh, look, I found this great program, little job, I'm going to send you is it referral or self-referral?
It's all of the things. The only, we do have, I guess, a referral for the individual support. That's the main one where there's an actual sort of form that we do submit, but young people can refer themselves. It can come from them, it can come from a family member, it can come from a professional working with them. It doesn't matter where that's coming from. But it is a real mix. We will often get calls from parents and they just don't know what's out there, so they're looking for opportunities for their kids. Or maybe their child is struggling with something and they don't know kind of where to go. But otherwise, through the youth service provider network, that's where a lot of this happens. So that network meets 4 times a year in person to be able to work together. But then there's weekly mail outs and things like that. So and there's a lot of cross-population as well. We're only one council. Knox is doing really similar stuff. It might have a different kind of flavour in their ranges. I mean, they've got such a huge area, it's extra tricky for them, but we all offer sort of similar stuff and try and work together to not duplicate that. So, because especially with us sort of Whitehorse and Knox, we're so close that young people can travel between. You know, we won't program the same thing on the same day as Knox does, for example, or whatever. So there's sometimes cross-referral as well between the councils and things. So.
And do your clients have to live in Maroondah or not?
No, they don't, no. Just sort of some connection to Maroondah is all we sort of ask, as long as they can get there. But we're really lucky because Maroondah's so tiny and so connected by public transport that, I mean, we work right opposite Ringwood Station, which is kind of the central station in the outer east. So, yeah, we're super lucky that we're really accessible. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Rachelle. That's really informative and challenging for us. One of my students was doing a doctorate on why young people were leaving religious organisations, and what he found was that the major reason was the fact that people didn't feel that the groups were tolerant and inclusive.
Yeah.
And I mean, you were putting up a whole lot of pointers about how to be tolerant and inclusive.
Yeah.
So I think we can move on to discussion from there and just see what that means for us, in a sense. So thank you.
Absolutely.
We appreciate that.